Of all kiteboarding's disciplines, big air is hands down the most spectacular. It's staged in the strongest winds, in the windiest places on the planet. Tarifa in southern Spain ticks those boxes and explains why it's a mecca for kiteboarders in general, and big air specialists in particular. It also explains why the Qatar Airways GKA Big Air Kite World Championships returned for the second successive year for the most eagerly awaited contests of the season. The best big air kiteboarders have also returned, with dreams of landing a coveted world title in the discipline, which has exploded in popularity among athletes and fans. With the growing following has come dizzying progression. The high-flying tricks have become increasingly complex in the athletes' race to win the judges' approval. Heart-stopping and violent double kite loops, pulled at 20 metres above the water, have become standard fare, less than 18 months after the move was invented. Hand in hand with these truly breathtaking developments comes greater risk of injury. But as you might expect, it's a clutch of fearless young guns who are constantly pushing the limits of kiteboarding's exciting new wave. Lorenzo Casati is still only 17 and is at the forefront. Natalie Lambrecht and Michele Sol earned their places alongside big air specialists Angeli Buyo and Zara Hugenrad. In the men's, Andrea Principi 18 is the one to beat, and Liam Whaley has him in his sights.
This year I'm feeling especially motivated, actually way more motivated than last year. I'm enjoying my time on the water a lot, having fun out there, learning new tricks, progressing, having a smile on my face. So I think that's the real difference. I've got a bit more of a relaxed approach, and even though I'm in first place and people think the pressure is on, for me it's kind of like I'm gonna go out there and have fun and do my best, and whatever happens, happens.
I try to don't have pressure anymore. It doesn't really, a little bit more adrenaline than pressure, because otherwise I lose my mind and I'm not focused on what I have to do anymore.
Yeah, definitely feeling some pressure, but I don't want to let it get to me, in the end, big air, I've only done it for a year and I've really progressed a lot, but I don't want to go out and kill myself over big air.
My biggest threat this year is definitely Andrea.
My biggest competitor, it's me. Yeah, it's me.
It's just me and my skill, so I don't feel I fight with someone, I fight with myself.
I need to beat me, I need to push myself to do trick that I do in training, and then I need to do this trick also in competitions. I need to go chill and just go full send.
I like big air because I like to fly, and what I love is chase a storm and really feel the strong element, It's like a kind of meditation also, I don't know, we are really on the flow, It's like the big time stop,
I know in freestyle, if you go out and you do your best, you can really send it, but big air, the safety factor is a lot more, it's a lot more dangerous, basically.
Well, to get injured for sure, I think this is the biggest fear in kiteboarding, but when you're kiting, you're not thinking about it, so you just go full send always. I think every rider is scared to crash.
An injury that will take me off the water for 6 months or 1 year I don't really fear that much, because that's something you can always come back for. I fear more an injury that would not allow me to live the rest of my life happily. That would really suck. But obviously you can't have those kind of thoughts in your mind. Try to stay as positive as possible, but also know your limits,
I need to be able to know when I need to push it more, but not push it too far over my limit so I don't hurt myself. So it's very a fine line, but I need to learn how not to cross it, but still give it my all.
I get inspiration from lots of different places. I think it can be from an athlete of our sport, it can be athletes of different sports, it can be from a conversation that I have with someone today. Yeah, for sure, there's a lot of references in this sport, Aaron Hadlow, Kevin Langery, people that have done well in kiting in particular, in different disciplines, or even in business, or growing their image as a kite surfer and continuing to be in the sport for many years. So yeah, I like to think that I'm kind of drawing my own path. Hopefully I can be here for a long time, and yeah, let's just take it day by day.
My plan is to compete in every big air competition possible to get more of a nicer feeling during the competitions. I do struggle a little bit with pressure, so this is my way to get out of that pressure and make sure that I feel comfortable on the water.
For me, it's really good to like alternate like the spot and training in different spot, because like this I get confidence with different condition, because also here is not all day the same, you know. One day is like choppy water, one day is waves, so the condition change a lot. Like this, if I train also in other spot, when I came here, I feel more confidence.
Big air kiteboarding has 3 classes, governed by the board the athletes use to boost their massive jumps. The hydrofoil is the most revolutionary. For some it appears unnerving too, with the prospect of a collision with sharp carbon fibre foils, a terrifying one. But the athletes shrug off the risks, eager to capitalise on the foil's big advantage. Its efficiency enables athletes to send it to the moon in even lighter breezes. The big air surfboard discipline is a remarkable feat of athleticism. The athletes ride their surfboard without straps, so must time their jumps to perfection. Grabbing the board as they head skyward, they must control their kites with one hand unless they park the board between their legs, a manoeuvre called a rodeo for obvious reasons. All that as they spin and roll through the air, sometimes pulling kite loops for good measure, before throwing the board back under their feet to land and ride away smoothly. The blue ribboned event, however, is without doubt big air twin tip. It demands the strongest winds for maximum wow and show factor. 30 knots of wind is considered the starting point. It attracts the cream of the sporting crop, eager to earn bragging rights and win the most sought after world titles in kiteboarding. For their part, the athletes have been pushing each other on. The tricks have become mind-bendingly complex as they roll, spin, kite loop and take the board off their feet just for good measure. All this to impress the judges with their mastery in the air. It is an incredible show, and one that's progressing at a pace that shows no hint of slowing. The crowds on the beach love it, even as they're sandblasted for their troubles.
So when we think about big air kiting, it is kiting not necessarily in the craziest of strong winds, but whenever you're on the beach and you see those riders going as high as possible, that is big air. We have other disciplines within kiting like freestyle and foiling, but big air is when the riders go up as high as basically they possibly can in the conditions that are provided. And then it's also the extreme factor of big air as well, pulling multiple rotations, multiple kite loops in some of the strongest winds that are on this planet. Depending on what sort of spot, you can always catch the magic gust. If you look at places like Barcarès in France, it is a place where it's super gusty. 1 minute you can have 20 knots of wind, the next you can have 50 knots of wind, and if you catch that magic gust that we've seen so many riders do, you can end up traveling 150, 200 meters plus downwind, Also, depending on the spot, somewhere like Tarifa with the pier, the wind sort of accelerates up it. That can also help get a little bit more height, especially on the initial part of your jump. So a lot of it does come down to location, but also having these riders just commit fully. A lot of it is down to commitment. If you commit, then you're going to go big. Big air is a lot more open-minded than what people initially think. They think that maybe you have to be out in crazy 40 knots conditions, and yes, that is a big factor of big air. But as we've seen over the last few years, the gear has developed so much. I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, big air, people only wanted to go out in 30+ knots, but now big air is able to be performed in the likes of 20 knots because the gear is allowing our riders to jump around that 10-meter mark. As soon as you get around the 8 to 10-meter mark, you can pull those initial kite loops. Obviously, big air, if it goes 35, 40, 40+, that's what all our, I'll say, pro riders want to compete in. The super strong winds, where they're able to go 20 meters plus, pull the double loops, multiple rotations, have enough time for the kite to catch them after those big moves. That's really where our sort of top level riders want to see the big air performed. Also, when we're looking at the window period for events, a big air event like Tarifa, it does have about a month, 3 weeks to 4 week waiting period. So we're really waiting for the optimal conditions to run. And in freestyle, when we go to a spot, it's more a week. So the riders know that they're going to be competing in that week. Mentally, it's a lot different because they know that they're going to compete in 5 days. They know the wind is going to be on. Whereas big air is a lot more preparation, maybe a little bit more stressful, especially if you know it's coming up. So two different disciplines, but also very different off the water. I think big air can work firstly at multiple locations if the weather systems align. If you check your forecast at your local spot and it's pumping, big air is going to work. But when we think about, famous locations for big air, especially in Europe, we have the Kite Mecca, obviously, Tarifa, Balneario, offshore, super strong winds with the Levante wind, the small strait between the line of Morocco and the tip of Tarifa, the wind just funnels through there and it just is sometimes nuclear. I mean, we had a competition earlier this year, 45+ knots, gnarly conditions. We've also got the likes of France coast, with sometimes that Tramontana wind that can really filter through from the mountains. Super strong wind there. We had the Lord of Trams back early in the year. Again, a little bit more gusty than Tarifa, but on its day can sure pack a punch. Outside of Europe, we have none other than Cape Town. We know that Cape Town delivers winds, especially in its summertime. It has Red Bull King of the Air there. It's where a lot of the riders go in the off season to train. Big kickers. If you see that cloud on top of Table Mountain, you know it's going to be a good day. 35+ knots. So I would say most famous spots in the world, if you just wanted to listen off the top of your head, Tarifa and Cape Town have got to be the two that everyone's going to say. If we look at the industry within big air and how that's developed, especially over, I'd say, the last couple of years, we've seen that big air, out of all the disciplines in kiting, is the one that's really taking it by storm. And brands are now using different materials. The kites are a lot lighter to turn a lot quicker. You can also get them out in slightly lighter winds. They're a lot more durable. The boards as well, you look at some of the new boards that the brands are bringing out with all the channels as well. The riders are able to hold a lot more grip when it comes to the water at a lot of speed. And I think a lot of the brands now are seeing that kiting is being pushed down that big air route, so a lot of their focus is going onto that big air equipment. One of the things we're most recently seeing, especially now that big air has evolved from just putting that one mega loop to now the double loops, is we're seeing all of our riders, say, rig up 2 kites and have a caddy on the beach that is sometimes holding that smaller kite. We see, let's say, our riders go out on their 8-meter kites to start their heat. They dial down their early tricks. Once they've landed those, they've got the scores. They'll always come in, switch it for something like a 5 or a 6, and then that's where we're seeing the more gnarly moves. That's where we're seeing the double kite loop board offs, the multiple rotations after double loop. So that's sort of the path we're seeing our riders take at the moment when it comes to competition.
Baccarat in southern France served up ideal big wins on the opening day of Lords of Tram, GKA Big Air Kite World Cup. The winds were ballistic from early morning and all of the leading contenders were amped and ready for action. The Swedish rider Natalie Lambrecht battled all the way to the women's semi-finals. the experienced freestyle kiteboarder has devoted a lot of time and effort to applying her skills to the big air discipline. Her hard work earned her a well-deserved third place at Lords of Tram. France's Angélique Bouillot is a big air specialist fully focused on the discipline. That experience shone through in the women's final, but in the end she couldn't quite put enough points on the board to take the win and was forced to settle for second place. Michaeli Sol is an 18-year-old kiteboarding superstar. The American already has 5 freestyle world titles to her name and is reigning big air world champion. She's been concentrating her attention on the exploding big air discipline lately, but her freestyle grounding and competition experience came to the fore in the final as she outpointed Bouillot in a tight encounter to take the win in France. Dutch teenager Jamie Overbeek is a man on the make. Since placing second at last year's Red Bull King of the Air, aged just 16, he's been hunting big air podiums. Battling up the order at Lords of Tram, the young Overbeek, now 17, caused some upsets when he showed some big names the door. His dizzying, high-flying style was enough to take third place, turning the tables on his old foe Lorenzo Casati, the victor at last year's King of the Air. Andrea Principi is the reigning GKA Big Air World Champion. In Bucharest, the Italian 18-year-old proved why he's sitting at the top of the pile. After seeing off some of the world's best as he battled his way to the final, he rarely missed a beat. His power, grace and sheer athleticism were on display in spades. But the conditions in the final were up and down, which didn't play to his strengths. In the end, he had to be content with second place. Former freestyle world champion Spain's Liam Whaley turned his attentions to big air several years ago. His dream is to land the big air world title. Whaley has put in the work to keep pace with his teenage rivals as they revolutionise big air with new, complex and riskier tricks. In the tricky final, he used his years of competition experience and freestyle background to the full. Whaley took the win in France, which was the first of 2 stops in the GKA Big Air World Title race. Fast forward 2 months and it was time for the concluding second round, which would decide the Qatar Airways GKA Big Air World Champions. Tarifa in southern Spain was again the stage, and the lure of the crowns drew athletes from all over the world.
Alright guys, so today's the second day, and yeah, conditions are definitely pumping.
Would any of her rivals be able to stop Michaeli Sol on her apparently relentless march to another title? Natalie Lambrecht had Sol in her sights. Zara Hugenrad was doing her level best to put big numbers on the board and push the young American. The Queen of the Air, Angélique Bouillot, wasn't going down without a fight either. Michaeli Sol was utterly relentless, riding with huge amounts of power and style. But the women in the 4-berth final traded blows as they threw down tricks in turn, each of them eager to impress the judges and tried to rein in Sol to keep her within range. In the end, Sol was in a different class and took the win, retaining her crown to bring her title haul to a remarkable 7. Lambrecht took second, Hugenrad third, with Bouillot fourth. The four-way men's final was a battle of Big Air's biggest hitters. Dutchman Giel Vlucht was up against fellow countryman Koen van Dijk. The teenaged world champion Andrea Principi went out guns blazing in defence of his title. Heart-stopping double kite loops were only perfected a year ago by Giel Vlucht and are now almost standard fare in the big air game. Lorenzo Casati showed that he was up for the fight. It was a battle royale in the fading light. All the edgy tricks that had been practiced and kept under wraps for this very moment were brought out of the locker. The Levante wind obliged too, picking up to more than 35 knots and ensuring opening up an early lead, but he faded towards the end. That left the door open for Principi. The young Italian took his chance. After a slow start where he'd crashed a couple of tricks, he turned on the style and powered away with some immense moves. The judges loved his double kite loops and innovative S loops. He was just elated, claiming the huge tricks that were made all the more remarkable by his smooth landings. Together, it was enough to give Principi the win and make it back-to-back Big Air World titles. In Baccares on the women's side, French big air legend Angélique Bouillot dominated rounds 2 and 3, and the semi-finals where she had the highest scores in each round after losing to Michele Sol in the first round. Both Sol and Bouillot won their semi-finals early, and it was time for a rematch from round 1. Sol was consistent with 3 high scores, while Bouillot did not manage to land a good third score. Nathalie Lambrecht had been stepping up a lot behind Bouillot and Sol, scoring high throughout the competition and ending up in third place. Going into the big air mecca, Tarifa, it came down to the same battle with Bouillot and Sol walking through rounds 1 to 4 with high scores. The highly anticipated final was the ultimate showdown of the big 4 riders of the moment: Sol, Bouillot, Lambrecht and Hugenrad. Sol scored consistently high, winning the final, while Bouillot struggled to land jumps and only scored 1 high score and ended in 4th place. Lambrecht continued her climb up the ranks and ended up in 2nd, and that result once again made Sol the GKA Big Air World Champion for the 2nd straight year. That 2nd place was enough for Lambrecht to pass both Hugenrad and Bouillot and claim 2nd place in the World Championships. Bouillot was understandably disappointed to miss out on the title after her strong performance in Baccares. In Baccares, Whaley showed great form and won the competition ahead of Principi. Principi had claimed the bigger jumps in Baccares, but the final showdown saw Whaley come out on top, scoring the highest total heat score with a 26.37, leaving Principi 5 points behind. Going into his hometown, Tarifa, Whaley was the favourite to win his first Big Air World title. Principi, meanwhile, has been pushing big air kiting over the last couple of years, and you have to consider him a favourite in any big air competition. He's the defending champion here in Tarifa and has been on the podium at pretty much every big air contest since 2022. Close behind is the 2022 King of the Air, Lorenzo Casati, and Dutch rider Jamie Overbeek, placing 3rd and 4th in Baccares and staying in contention for the title. In Tarifa, the riding level was incredibly high with all of the big names in contention. Andre and Liam won their first rounds with impressively high scores. In the semis, Principi eliminated Mark Jacobs with the highest score of the competition and moved into the finals, while Whaley suffered the biggest upset of the competition by losing a semi-final to an on-fire Koen van Dijk from the Netherlands. That shock result meant Principe only needed to land second place in the final to take the World Championship. It was a slow start, but eventually he prevailed and took out the finals by the closest of margins from Koen van Dijk, and in the process crowned himself GKA Big Air Kite World Champion for the second time in a row, leaving Liam Whaley in second and Casati in third. Tarifa is fast establishing itself as the go-to big air hotspot. Bacarez is a new stop for the Qatar Airways GKA Kite World Tour. Both delivered the new king conditions that big air athletes crave. And in those conditions, the riders in this rapidly evolving discipline put on fantastic shows. Stay tuned to see where the journey takes us.